Hey guys, the Kaiser back again. And in this time of Holy Week, I feel it's incredibly important that I share these thoughts and that I just put them out there, okay? I saw recently some videos, which I always try to watch around the time of Holy Week, to see Holy Week in Seville and Spain and other Catholic countries where they really go all out with this stuff, where they have spent enormous sums of money, enormous time, where craftsmen have put in their entire lives into building beautiful processional pieces and sewing wonderful flags, and where the military parades, as an honor guard for the Blessed Sacrament, and where they still do all these wonderful things. I like to see that. I like to see it, and to spend Holy Week in Seville before it stops being a thing is one of my big dreams. When I have the time and I have the capability. But all that considered, even though Spain has one of the most, and most Spanish-speaking countries have some of the most amazing Holy Week celebrations in the world, I think it's important that we get real about the states of these countries, because we have a tendency, I think, as American Catholics, or we American Catholics especially have a tendency to just look at that and see that's what Europe's like. The fact of the matter is, the state of Catholicism in Europe is no different than it is anywhere else in America. It's no different in your parish than it is anywhere else in the world. This is literally a universal problem across all spectrums of the Catholic religion, across all sides of the aisle. This is a problem. And it can be summed up like this. It is not enough to just have the smells and the bells. I don't understand how we miss this. We were all taught this in catechism. We were all taught this growing up as kids, that the sacraments aren't magic. You can't just do them a certain way and have them work. It's not enough. You have to believe. You have to, be a open vessel. You have to be consecrated properly. The sacrament has to be done correctly in the first place, which in most places they're not anymore. And how do I know this? Because they're not done by the old rubrics right. They're not done by even the places where they follow the rubrics correctly by the new standards, which are patently wrong. They don't follow them correctly even then. And this is not a world anymore where a high mass takes 3 hours for your average parish. I mean, the average mass, I think, runs, 45 minutes? I mean, this is not the old days where you had to stand for 3 hours. I mean, for the love of Christ, when was the last time the Orthodox changed their liturgy? They have changed it, but, when was the last time they changed it? I went to a Syrian Orthodox parish over Christmas. I wasn't attending religiously. I was there with a friend because I was staying with him, and he's a deacon with them, and he's very Roman-friendly. And, I stood for maybe 2 hours, and nobody else seemed to have the problem of standing for 2 hours. I was okay with it, but I was certainly not used to it. I was not used to going to a church and standing for 2 hours. I don't even know why they had pews, honestly. As much time as I spent standing, it was pretty unreal. And to think that we can't even do the most basic of our devotions in spite of this is ridiculous. I'm not saying the Orthodox are perfect. I'm just pointing something out. The fact is, there are many who think we can just go back to doing the old form, and that's fine. Well, okay, let's talk about Spain, all right? Spain, they have these wonderful Holy Week processions. They do all these wonderful things, right? But let's look at the realities of the country, okay? Philip V of Spain refused to be crowned by, the Archbishop. He refused to be crowned in a cathedral. He had a secular coronation ceremony where he said, his oath essentially said, all of his power comes from Parliament. Which is absolutely disgraceful for a Spanish king, okay? It's somehow more disgraceful than if the Republicans had just dragged the royal family into the streets and fed them to dogs. It's somehow less disgraceful, because at least one episode, that episode implies resistance to modernism. That implies that, the last of Spanish royal blood went out like men, went out like the warrior kings that wrested that peninsula from the Moorish invaders. But no, literally, when there was a greater resurgence of monarchism in Spain, all of a sudden, after the abdication of Juan Carlos, you had these guys in the streets I think the Oriamandi was heard in Madrid for the first time, really, with full throats, since the Spanish Civil War. That's a historical landmark, people. Like, that would be like that would be like someone taking a burning cross between, the Highland villages in Scotland and, raising up an army of blue beret wearing Scotsmen to take London for Franz Wittelsbach at this point. I mean, that's about how crazy that is. And yet it didn't matter. Spain was one of the first countries to legalize gay marriage. I'm really not that hung up about secular places legalizing gay marriage. I'm really not. I am bothered when a country like Spain does it, though, even though their constitution threw the church out a long time ago. I'm bothered because that's not the case for that country. Like, Spain was like the 7-part code, which was the basis of Spanish legal text, was a quasi-theological document. I mean, you can't, it's not the same as with America. That's a clear departure from their tradition. And, I still think you could have had a secular compromise, but they decided they full-on legalized it, and the church was not resistant to it at all. The Spanish church is riddled with financial problems and scandals, arguably worse than our sex abuse crisis, because they didn't just abuse kids and, not tell anybody. No, after the Civil War, they worked hand-in-hand with the Franco government to abduct the children, like the grandchildren of Republican families, like back in the old days in the Civil War, after it was way gone and done and over with. Like, they abducted them from their parents, raised them in orphanages, told them their parents abandoned them, and then just shuffled them around to foster homes. And and people say, oh man, if only we had Franco around, we could really get stuff done. No, Franco put Juan Carlos on the throne when he should have never gotten it. Okay? The Carlists should have never helped Franco. They could have, if Franco didn't need the Carlists to win, he wouldn't have begged and pleaded for them to help. Like, he needed them to win. A large majority of some of the best Spanish infantry were Carlist shock troopers, the Roquettes. And I think that they've always been good soldiers, but they had good leadership this time, and they did very well during the Spanish Civil War. And they could have easily, with enough outside help, beaten both factions, the Republicans and the Francoists, and they could have taken over the country very easily, provided they didn't get up to the same chicanery that the first Carlist uprising got up to even after they started winning. And, you have to teach the theology, you have to teach the philosophy, you have to teach the history, you have to ingrain values in people correctly, you have to use the correct teaching methods, you have to impart values in these people. It's not enough to just get the visuals right. That's not enough. If that was the case, then most of the trad friends that I grew up with, who either came from good families in traditional parishes, or at least, were strongly religiously formed in spite of whatever struggles they went through, would not now, as they go to college, be leaving the religion. Oh, and I wonder why they're leaving the religion. Maybe it's because they realize when they get out of whatever redneck, far-flung corner of the world their church is and where they were raised, they can't get the Mass anywhere. Or maybe it's because every single, even quasi-solid traditional Catholic college costs an exorbitant amount of money to go to. And I don't know about you, but I have never met a rich trad family. Ever. Like, they're middle class at most. And because some of them have like 7 kids, they do not have the money to send all 7 of those kids to college. It's just not gonna happen. It ain't happening. Even with a full ride. Like some of these kids couldn't get the full ride. Because of their family's income and the number of kids, they would never get FASFA, they'd never get anything. The best they could hope for is a cheap school near where they grew up or taking online classes. And that's not good enough. The parochial schools and the Catholic colleges were designed so poor immigrant children could get a college education and compete with the WASPs who are running America. So they could show them we are civilized, we are educated, we invented this whole frickin' college thing. We can do it better than you, and we can be a part of this country. But no, now it's become this haven for, second-rate Ivy Leaguers to wax poetic about their superior liturgical tastes. Meanwhile, they keep the religion about as well as any other college student. At least I'm honest about my quasi-apostasy because I can't find a church to go to. At least I'm honest about that. I don't lie to myself and say because I go somewhere where they either follow the rubrics or the bishop will freaking castrate the priest, I'm honest about my religious apostasy. I'm honest about it. And I still believe it, but I don't go to Mass. I don't even try at this point to find a parish because it's pointless, because I've been everywhere there is to go. And on my budget, hell no, I'm not driving 4 hours for Mass. I literally couldn't afford that even if I did get a job. In any case, my point is, trads have got to start changing how they do things. We cannot ignore the problems in our own communities, the historical inerrancies, the rampant wild belief and unfounded conspiracy theories that have been disproven time and time again. And I don't think they'll stop believing until one of their own stands up and says, hey, I'm as Catholic as the rest of you, but look, history is not on your side with this bullshit. The theological problems, the belief that anything right is right, the constant, unwilling, unequivocal, willingness to, just rather self-fellatio yourself, over your theological know-how rather than actually teaching people the religion. The constant use of bully pulpit tactics rather than using meaningful, insightful, inspiring, or even, teachable rhetoric. The endless, reliance on historical fallacies and, false equivalencies to convince people this whole frickin' situation is not as bad as it actually is. We need to be honest with ourselves. We need to fix our own problems. We need to stop ignoring them and quit acting like just because the Mass is said in perfect liturgical form and in excellent tune and pitch that it's okay. We need to stop doing that, and we're doing that. Okay? And the constant reliance on just, praising, failed far-rightist leaders who use Catholicism to appeal to their people, and whose regimes are the very reason now that these countries are no longer Catholic because they alienated their own people from a religion that literally is the reason their nation exists. Rather than looking to examples of actual successes in our history and how we got successful in the first place, not the failed second try. We need to fix these problems, we need to fix them now, and we need to stop acting like just because everything looks and feels right, that everything is fine. Only then are we going to see actual, true restoration.